Good morning, everyone. My name is Anton, and I'll be presenting today at the HIA Insurance Services for DBI warranty. I'll give it a few minutes. I'll give it 2 minutes just for people to join on for the time being. If you've got any questions, we do have a chat box for you to access. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, I'll try and address it during the presentation. But if not, I will address all the questions at the very end of the presentation. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining on today's webinar. My name is Anton, and I'm presenting today's about domestic building insurance. I'm client executive here at HIA Insurance Services. I specialise in domestic building insurance. I've been doing this for close to 4 years now, and yeah, but for the time being, we've got housekeeping rules. If you've got any questions, we do have a chat box available. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box. I will try and address all the questions during the presentation. If not, I'll address all the questions at the very end of the presentation. But today, we'll be talking purely about domestic building insurance. And on today's agenda, we'll be talking about background about HIAIS, what is domestic building insurance, review eligibility and limit changes to your eligibility, and how you can increase your limits. We'll also be talking about the process for a letter of eligibility once submitted, and what other services that HIA insurance services can do. But without further ado, we'll start the presentation. We'll try and keep it very simple and very informative. I don't want to be carrying on in this presentation with a lot of words, so I'll just be trying to keep it very short and very informative. But yes, a little bit on HIA Insurance Services. So HIA Insurance Services is a specialist insurance broker providing insurances, products and risk advice to the residential building industry. It was formed in 1984. HIAIS is a joint venture between the two leaders in the respective industries, Aon and Housing Industry Association, or HIA. Our deep connection to the Australian residential building industry positions HIAIS is not only a service tradies and builders, but also to support the industry authority. By working with our key partners, HIA and Aon, have the ability to provide education to our clients on better risk management principles and solutions, which helps to support quality building to the benefit of builders. These are some of our one of many brand values, expertise, advocacy, and reliable service. So what is domestic building insurance? So domestic building insurance is one of our key services that HIA do provide, so DBI. As HIA is one of the distributors of the BPC. So we are one of 4 distributors for the BPC that deal with domestic building insurance. Builders in Victoria are required by law to take out domestic building insurance, also known as builders' warranty insurance, for work valued at $16,000. Builders must have a domestic building insurance certificate before they start work or ask for a deposit or any other payment. Having domestic building insurance eligibility is a requirement for maintaining a Victorian building registration. So domestic building insurance, what they protect the homeowners if the builder dies, disappears, or becomes insolvent, or fails to comply with a tribunal or court order. What I would take away from this is that a lot of builders are in the last steps of getting their licenses. That's when they will need to apply for a lot of eligibility. That's the service that we can provide for you and help you out in getting licenses. Is getting that last part of that form for you, or that letter, so you can get approved for your builder's registration to get your builder's license. Yes, yeah. So on the next slide, what we'll be talking about that bit more on the domestic building side. So if a builder wants to get through DBI for the BPC, you must first be eligible. Eligibility outlines the terms of approval to purchase DBI under certain conditions. It tells us the types of projects that are allowed to get insurance coverage for, the maximum value of each project type. Builders must also have eligibility before they purchase DBI for a job. So with eligibility, once you get your eligibility, you'll have certain limits in what you're able to work through. And a lot of builders, especially existing builders, would also want to increase. So a lot of builders, once they grow with their company, they want to look to do bigger jobs, and to do that, you need to go through a full financial review. So if you're looking to obtain eligibility or increase the eligibility limits, the BPC will assess their eligibility based on the financial health, building history, and project capability. This helps the BPC understand the risk of projects not being completed or being effective. The process commences with an application form, a list of documents to support required limits. Examples, bank statements, rate notice, and company information. BPC will review your past building performance, the type and number of projects proposed, technical and management skills, business history, financial position, and solvency. The application process, HIAIS has dedicated DBI warranty team to support your new or review application. We'll provide you with checklists or required information for your application and be available to support with this process. So the process usually takes around 8 to 10 weeks once we do submit it, especially with limits changes and increases. Yeah, it does take around 8 to 10 weeks again. I will explain a little bit more on if you're coming on as a new builder, what that process looks like. But before anything to do with increases, anything to do with increases, that a full financial review is required. So on the next slide, some of the things that the BBC a bit more in depth what they do look at is regarding their financial checks. So what the BBC do look at is your net tangible assets and turnover growth, your shareholders' funds per sales, your profit margins, your interest cover and cash flow, and your working capital position. So other factors they do take into account is your payment and collection cycles, business structure and trading history, statements of assets and liabilities, return on equity and assets. The main things I would probably look at once you're going through a review or you're coming on as a new builder is your net tangible assets and turnover growth and your working capital. BBC typically mainly look at those two factors when you're applying for a limit or increasing the limit. I would say that you would have to have a strong asset backing and a strong working capital position to the limit that you're requesting for. We're not certain on the percentage on what that is, but if you're wanting to increase, that's a good note to take down. Those are the two main things that the BBC do look at. On the next slide, we'll just be talking about the letter of eligibility process. So this letter of eligibility process starts from left to right. So if we look at the first box, it's application process from 8 to 10 weeks. So from here, once we do submit to the BBC, we grab all your application and supporting documents. We build pretty much a portfolio or a case to send to the BBC to help you get your limit essentially. Once we do submit that off, it does take 8 to 10 weeks. We can try and escalate it, however, the expectation with the BBC is 8 to 10 weeks. I know a lot of builders request for a lot of builders have a due date for their license to get that letter of eligibility. However, if you do let the licensing side of the BBC aware that you're in the process and you can show the emails as evidence, they'll most likely give you an extension. At the very end of when we do submit your application, you do get an application reference number as well. You can ask whoever you're dealing with for that application reference number to send that to you as well to show as evidence that you've submitted to the BBC for a letter of eligibility, which will allow you have that extension for that 8 to 10 weeks. Once we do submit it, in that process of that 8 to 10 weeks, the BBC will review your application, all supporting documents, all your financials, and if the BBC approve your application, they may offer terms or a deed, depending on the situation. Deeds are usually applied if you're coming on as a company, or if you're applying as a company, or applying as a partnership as well. So if the BBC offer you terms, they will essentially want you to meet those terms before they can officially approve. Once you've been approved, or the BBC have reviewed and you don't need additional terms, you'll then get a pending letter of eligibility. That pending letter of eligibility shows that you're eligible to get domestic building insurance. And if BBC show that you've got pending letter of eligibility or sorted, you'll be able to use that pending letter of eligibility to show that you're eligible for domestic building insurance, which will allow you to have your building registration with the BBC. So essentially, as soon as you get your pending letter of eligibility, you'll get your builder's license. You will receive, if you're applying as a company, you'll receive 2 licenses after you apply for it: your company license and your individual license. If you're applying as a sole trader, you only require your individual license. Once you have obtained your individual license, you will send that back to HIAIS, and we'll be able to send that to the BBC, and then you'll be given an official letter of eligibility. The BBC will send you login details so you're able to access the Build portal. That Build portal enables you to purchase certificates for your upcoming projects that you wish to do. Again, as mentioned, if you wanted to increase whatever limits that's been given to you, you will need to undergo a full financial review with the BBC, which means you'll need to provide an application form with your new limits, with the financial documentation, along with any supporting documents that's required to go through an increase. And that process would start you roughly around the start, which once we do submit, it takes 8 to 10 weeks. And the BBC will review your documents, and if they see that you're in a healthy financial situation, then they'll most likely give you the letter of eligibility with your new limits, or give you a terms offered, which is them offering you a limit. However, these are conditions that you need to meet. Moving on to what the letter of eligibility looks like. So your letter of eligibility will outline the category and overall construction limits. This means that the maximum limit available to you for each job and overall. For example, let's say if a builder applied for 1 million of domestic building insurance, they're capped with the categories of what they can do in each job. Those categories are shown on the right-hand side on what they do look at. However, if the total construction limit for this situation is 2 mil, you have $2 million of domestic building insurance. However, you're capped at single dwelling at 1.5 mil, your multi-dwellings capped at 1 mil, and your structural is capped at 1.3 mil, and your non-structural is 50,000. So the certificate of insurance, they generate a certificate of insurance for each job over 16,000, and that can be done on the Build portal. Your building surveyor will require a copy of the certificate along with the homeowner. Amend, cancel. A certificate can be amended, cancelled if there are contractual changes. This could be changes in total construction value of the contract, homeowner names, and site address. Once the project has been completed, you'll obtain an occupancy certificate. You'll be able to notify the BPC via the Build portal. That project is complete, and the project limit will be added back to your available construction limit. So construction works and public liabilities. So these are some of the other services that HIAIS can provide. Not only domestic building insurance, but we also provide contract works insurance, professional indemnity insurance, management liability insurance, and commercial motor. Yeah, so these are probably the main insurances that will help support your businesses, especially when you're starting off. These are typically the main four insurances that you probably want to be taking on as a new company. With contract works insurance, public and product liability, and material damage cover for builders, tradies, and subcontractors. Professional indemnity insurance. Professional indemnity insurance safeguards business against claims and malpractice or breach of duty. Management liability insurance. Management liability insurance helps cover you for everyday risks associated with managing your business. Commercial motor protects your vehicle fleet against loss or damage or with commercial motor insurance. But that concludes today's presentation. Anyone had any questions regarding today's webinar? We do have a chat box available. However, I'll keep the webinar ongoing until if anyone's got any questions for the next 5 minutes. But yes, thanks for listening today on today's webinar for domestic building insurance. If don't see any questions coming through, so I might conclude the webinar today. But thank you everyone for listening in regarding domestic building insurance. If you've got any questions, we do have a QR code, or if you have any questions down the line when you're doing your insurances, we do have a number that you can contact us on. But again, thank you for today, and we do have another webinar set in June, which will have more in-depth review regarding what the BBC do look at once they do their assessment. But thank you again. Thank you.